Hello and welcome to the Inside Ellen Road podcast with me, Joe Donoghue, and YEP chief football writer Grim Smith. Plenty to discuss in the wake of Leeds United's 2-2 draw with Swansea City at Ellen Road last weekend, not least who will play in goal against Luton Town on Saturday. Illan Meslier committed another error in the Leeds goal, two if you're assessing the quality of his shot stopping, which let slip what could have been another valuable 3 points after similar slip-ups versus Sunderland and Hull City earlier this term. Meslier and the goalkeeping situation is probably the best place to start then, because that has dominated the discussion this week. As I was leaving Ellen Road on Saturday evening, headed down to the station, it was pretty much the only thing you could overhear being talked about by the fans. 7 games to go then, Graham. What do you do if you're Daniel Farke?
I bring Carl Darlow in because I think the risk is too great. Farke's he's staking his job on these players now. He's staking Leeds United's promotion chances on these players now. So each and every team selection is absolutely crucial. It's monumental. And I think it's happened too many times. And the risk of it happening again in the last 7 games. I mean, he might go out at Luton and have a solid performance. He might be fine at Borough. You just never know, though, when, this is going to happen again. And they're so inexplicable and so costly when they happen. If he dropped one into his net in the 7-0 game against Cardiff and they won 7-1, it's not so much of an issue. But Sunderland, 2 points dropped. Hull, 2 points dropped. Swansea City, you have to say, 2 points dropped.
It's at that point now, isn't it, where you just can't account for him not messing up in the next 7 games, which is a horrible place to be in, because ultimately it's something that no goalkeeping coach or no first team manager or the defense in front of him, it's nothing that they can do. It's something which clearly stems from him. I mean, you think about the Sunderland game, 96th minute. You think about the second goal that Swansea scored, which had a widely understood to be an XG value of 0.03. So that's 1 in 20 times that goal is scored. It's just unfortunate for Leeds that was scored at the time that it was. I think the biggest issue I have with it is it's a recurring theme now. Everybody can see it, but it doesn't feel as though it's a foregone conclusion that we will see Carl Darlow, which is the thing which is giving people the anxiety of, well, will Leeds go up? Because ultimately Mellier's errors, which are causing the team to drop points, are the thing which stands between Leeds being top of the table and Leeds being by some distance, by the way, and Leeds potentially needing to be in the playoffs again. That's how fine the margins are.
Yeah, it's an odd one, isn't it? Because look, he's obviously he's been loyal to Meslier and he's backed him incredibly. I mean, he's backed him in a way that even Meslier himself probably could not have demanded or expected this season. Conversely, he hasn't trusted Carl Darlow. Now, I can't sit here and say Carl Darlow wowed me when I've seen him in action for Leeds. I can't say that he's been so good that you'd think he's banging down the door to get in there. But he was in much changed teams when he played in the cup games this season, and he didn't have the first choice back four in front of him. He didn't have the first choice midfield. Leeds didn't really have the momentum in those games, and there's lots of kind of reasons why you can't really judge him entirely on those performances. But he's a very experienced goalkeeper, and it's strange to me that Farke hasn't turned to him after one of these high-profile ricks from Meslier. And the only thing I can put it down to is that there's something that he's not doing that Farke needs to see before he can trust him to be his goalkeeper. Because it cannot be the case that he's seeing something from Meslier. It's not, for me, something Meslier is doing to keep Darlow at the team. It must be something Darlow's not doing. Because Mellier's shot stopping, by the statistics, is still an underperformance, it has been for a few years now. Last season, his shot stopping performance was way below the best in the division. This season, you'd have to say, and I don't think you could argue this, that had Leeds got a Victor Johansson or a Michael Cooper in the net, then I think they'd be top of the table by a few points. I honestly don't think that that's even up for debate anymore. So it all comes down to Farke, really, and his reasoning for sticking with Meslier. And we'll speak to him later this afternoon. And I'm pretty sure that'll be one of the subjects that comes up and will be drilled down into, as much as he'll let us. Because ultimately, we can ask the question, but we can't make him say what fans want to hear. You know, we can't make him say, I'm making a change, or we can't haul him over the desk and put him on hot coals until he admits that there's some reason why he doesn't trust Carl Darlow. But it is an enormous issue, an enormous talking point. And I almost think the scale of it and how divisive it is with fans and the potential for... Do you remember that game not long ago where the ball was spooned up in the air, Meslier was underneath it, and there was an audible ripple of nerves around the stadium? And when he gathered it, there was like an almost comedic... almost like a laughter of relief went around the stadium because he grabbed that ball. I don't think you can have that at this point of the season. And I think bringing Darlow in, even if, right, he plays fairly well against Luton, I think it just calms everything down and it takes away that narrative. It takes away one of the big kind of divisive talking points that's making people angry. And it maybe helps the fans be a little bit more on side at a time when the team will really need them. I mean, this is going to be so nervy now between now and the end of the season. The only thing that will dispel the nerves really is Leeds winning their next 4 games and looking dominant and comfortable. That's what it's going to take, because at the minute the nerves appear to be shot.
Just to touch on a few things that you said there, we are going to be hearing from Daniel Farke later this afternoon. We will record this week's episode in 2 parts. So when Graham is back from the press conference, we'll react to whatever Farke has said. We'll finish on the stats thing and the goalkeeping, shot stopping performance. But when you mentioned there about sort of that ripple of noise at Elland Road when that ball looped into the air, can't remember which game it was. It reminded me of something which happened at Elland Road on Saturday, and that was when the replay of Zan Vipotnik's 96-minute equaliser was shown on the screen. There was an audible sort of, not gasp, but sort of a chortle, not a chortle, sort of like a little chuntering of, oh, like, can you believe he's let that through him, sort of thing. And that again is one of the few times that I've heard that in a football stadium. Certainly from a negative perspective, you sometimes see at grounds when goals are shown on the big screen as a replay, and fans of the team who have scored will watch it and they'll make a collective noise at the quality of the strike. It was the fact that Meslier had let that shot through him after what had happened previously in the game and after what had happened at Hull and Sunderland. And, there've been other games where you could argue that his performances have been pretty subpar. It just felt like it felt like it came to a head at that very moment. His body language at full time was difficult to see because, he's clearly going through it. He is a human being at the end of the day. But, he's someone in a very privileged position. And unfortunately, at the moment, over an extended period, he hasn't delivered at the level that is expected of him. I hear people say, he's made lots of great saves. Yes, he has, but goalkeepers do that. That is what they do. That's what they're in the team to do. Like a striker who scores goals. Patrick Bamford's coming for criticism previously, where he's missed some high-profile chances. The penalty at Stoke, the chance against Leicester back in the or Aston Villa back in the Premier League, which was at the back post. Bamford has also scored a lot of very, very good goals, some technically difficult goals to score. But that doesn't mean that he should be in the team ahead of someone like Joe Piroux right now on the basis of he has scored great goals previously. Yeah, and the statistics side of things. I mean, I've got them here. It's something that we have mentioned on this podcast a few times. I've written a piece about it 11 months ago about his Meslier's historic shot stopping performance, and I despair when I look at what could have been. You know, you look at Victor Johansson for Stoke has prevented 14 goals this season with the quality of his saves cumulatively. James Trafford, 11 goals. Jamie Cumming at Oxford, 9 goals. Connor Hazard at Plymouth, 8 goals. Michael Cooper at Sheffield United, 7 goals. Mellier's way down on that. He's sort of negative 0.4 in terms of post-shot XG, which is a metric which determines how likely a goalkeeper is to save a shot based on the quality of the strike. He's slightly below average in terms of shot stopping, and that's not even taking into account the errors that he is making. You know, the spilling the ball at João Pedro's feet, or you know, losing the flight of the ball against Sunderland, or spilling the ball at Harry Darling's feet last weekend. It's just, I don't want to say his position's untenable now, because I can see him starting against Luton, but it is just a very, very difficult spot to be in.
Yeah, I think he needs saving from himself almost, because I think there's a real danger of his head going completely, and Leeds really cannot afford that. I also think that his teammates have to bear some responsibility. You know, we've talked a lot, and it's been highlighted a lot, the reactions of players to his mistakes. You know, the reactions of players around him, the still photos that show it, the footage that shows it, you know, the flabbergasted, disgust, angry, whatever it might be on the faces or in the reactions of players. But they really let him down, I think, for that second goal. Yes, that shot should never go in. I mean, Daniel Farke said it's not even a chance. He's not even regarded it as a chance, and it somehow hit the back of the net. But that entire sequence was a horror show from Leeds. And it wasn't the only time in the game when a restart from a throw-in was really sloppy. There were a number of times in the game where they just handed the ball straight back to Swansea, and it looked, there was a little bit of laziness almost, or a bit of complacency. I don't know what it was, or sluggishness. Maybe first game back after the international break. I don't know, but they just did not look cohesive from their own throw-ins. This one's in their own half. It's thrown to Mateo Joseph. His touch is terrible and hands the ball straight back to Swansea. Puts them on the front foot. Al Tanaka doesn't get a challenge in. Stroik allows himself to be nutmegged, and then the lad's in behind, and he has the shot. It should never come to that. There should never be a shot. And I keep coming back to the feeling that I think Sheffield United currently see that game out 2-1. I think Burnley probably shut the door and win that game 2-1. And it does not speak highly of Leeds United and where they are right now that they conceded that goal. It just adds weight to this feeling that they are going through a wobble. I mean, the results say it. 1 win in 5. Historically, all season, they've been tremendous at bouncing back from poor spells. They haven't yet shown that in this spell. You know, they haven't come back with those 1 or 2 wins. And it's a bit of a worry. I mean, I still think they've got enough in the dressing room. I think they've got more than enough in the dressing room to finish top 2. But they're going through a rough spell, and they need to snap out of it very, very quickly. And they cannot afford moments where, in the 96th minute, you have a trampoline touch in your own half and give the ball straight to the opposition. You just can't have that. And it makes me think again that Daniel Farke's team selection and his substitutions need to be absolutely bang on. It needs to be the players that can be most trusted, the players that are right for whatever situation that Leeds find themselves in the game, and players that I guess that have the mental capacity to stand up to the nerves that are coming their way. And again, I think there are those players in the dressing room. You know, I think they have leaders in the dressing room, but God, do they ever need to stand up like they do right now?
The big thing for me this weekend going into the Luton game is score the first goal, because Leeds have conceded the first goal in each of their last 3 away games. The team haven't gone on a winless run of 3 games at all this season, and we'll be at game 40, won't we, this weekend? It's now is not the time to go 3 without a win. The first time this season, and you just have to score the first goal, because Luton are fighting for their lives. They're scrapping. They are physical. They're big. They've been unlucky in a lot of games this season. Elijah Adebayo has massively underperformed his expected goals this season. This is someone who was in the Championship, in the Premier League last year. Carlton Morris is a bully. Someone who is really going to put the centre backs under pressure and get the wingers playing off him. And I just worry that if Leeds aren't up to it, that they will concede the first goal, and it'll be a very familiar away performance to what we've seen recently. And then ultimately, it won't matter who's in goal at that point, because the team will have given away too many opportunities. Do we want to talk about other elements of Daniel Farke's team selection this weekend? Because while last week we saw Brendan Aronson stay in the number 10 position, I think that was pretty much expected and understandable given the injury sustained by Willy Gnonto during the international break. It was good that Gnonto came on, I thought, because it shows that he's not severely injured. It was good to see Willy Gnonto scoring off the bench. He was brought on in like the 84th minute, and I think he'd scored by the 86th or the 87th. It sort of mirrored the instant impact that he had against QPR, playing that lovely through ball for Dan James before Jayden Bogle equalised against QPR. So there's been a couple of occasions now when Gnonto's come off the bench and he's made a tangible difference to the scoreline within minutes. And I think at this stage of the season, you absolutely need that in the team, especially with the importance of scoring the first goal. Leeds need to start at the same intensity that they did in the first 35 seconds against Swansea and then maintain it.
Yeah, I think we should talk about the team selection for Swansea first and foremost, because I wonder if, with hindsight, Daniel Farke maybe regrets not putting Tanaka and Firpo on from the start. Now, I know that Tanaka wasn't great when he came on. I mean, he played the ball behind for the corner that preceded the corner that Meslier dropped, and he played it behind completely unnecessarily, just miscued it off his foot, which we haven't seen from him. We haven't seen that kind of error from him a lot this season at all. Then he didn't make the challenge for the second goal. But bringing in Ampadu, I understand he wants Ampadu in as quickly as possible, but Ampadu was so rusty that you maybe wonder in hindsight, should he have been coming off the bench in the second half into a less pressured situation? I don't know, because maybe Leeds would have been up. I don't know. It's hard to second guess, isn't it? But was Firpo so drained by his travel that he couldn't start? Was that maybe a little bit over caution, or was there an issue for Firpo that Farke didn't disclose? It's easy to second guess in hindsight. I get that point, but I just wonder if he has any regrets about that team selection and the decisions he made. I don't think he would have started Gnonto. Obviously couldn't have. That would have been insanity with a player with an ankle injury. But I wonder, could Firpo have played 45, 60 minutes? And then if he was flagging, you take him off and put Byram on. You go after teams, don't you, at this stage of the season, or you have to go after teams at this stage of the season. You're at home, and they started well enough because they scored that goal, scrappy goal. But a goal.
But you've got to be in a position to make it scrappy, haven't you?
Yeah, you have to. Like Aronson has to be there to make that, to tackle it into the net. And then he kind of points to his head in celebration, and you think, right, he's up for this. He scored a goal. He's got the monkey off his back. Let's see what else happens. And then the performance just did not materialize from that point in. Not only from Aronson, who I thought did not follow up that goal with the kind of confidence and performance that you would hope would follow the goal. Ampadu was incredibly rusty. Peru flitted in and out of the game, and when he did get chances, he didn't score. And Dan James, I thought, was pretty dangerous, but the end product was a struggle. Maybe towards the second half, he started to change that and started to look more likely to get the ball in the back of the net or to create something. Solomon, I thought, didn't have a great game. And there was just too many that were a little bit off it. Early kickoff is not an excuse in this instance. So Farke is talking about the international break, but Sheffield United came back from the international break earlier than Leeds had to on the Friday night and won. Leeds easily could have won that game against Swansea had Peru taken his chances and had they not conceded those two woeful goals. But I just think there was something not quite right about the performance, and Yeah, and maybe the team selection, maybe there's something just not quite right about that either. So it really puts the onus on Farke to get it bang on for Luton, because as you said, they're going to be physical. They're going to put it on Leeds. They'll target if Melee's in goal, there will be a lot of crosses. They'll be looking for free kicks and corners to pump into the area to get bodies around him and see if they can get in his head early and see if they can pressure him into a mistake early on. And the first goal in early kickoffs away from home for Leeds is an issue that they really need to resolve. They really need to score first, and then they need to cut Luton apart, countering if they need to, but in transition certainly, because they've got the pace and the skill to do that. But they cannot go into this game with a mindset that's anything other than we're going to win this and we're going to go right at them from the start and show them how superior we are.
Just some headline figures from Opta about Luton's prowess in the air or from set pieces. They've scored 14 goals from set plays this season, which is the joint second highest in the division. They've had the most shots, second most shots from set pieces this season. Their XG from set plays is the third highest, and in terms of the percentage of shots that they get from set pieces, or rather that teams get from set pieces, Luton get the second most in the Championship. So you're absolutely bang on. They are going to try and maximise those set play opportunities because that is where they're strong. And ultimately, they're going to try and pin Meslier. That is exactly what they'll do if he's in goal. They'll do that to Darlow as well. They've done it to every goalkeeper. So Leeds really need to be at it. I agree with you in the sense that the performance wasn't at the same level that we've seen over the course of the season, but maybe we're looking at that through rose-tinted glasses slightly. If Meslier doesn't drop that ball for 1-1 and Leeds don't give away possession for 2-2, we're looking at a pretty routine home win there. Yes, Swansea did have decent portions of the game, but I didn't think they were particularly threatening. I thought the penalty was, it was one of those. It was soft for me, but and very much in the seen them waved away territory. But it wasn't as though Leeds were under the cosh at all. They still had the bulk of possession. They still had the bulk of the chances. It's just, I think there's what you can put it down to is very, very difficult to sort of nail down, because you could suggest it's a lack of rotation and the starters have been driven into the ground. Yes, that might be the case. 39 games where there's with the smallest squad, you probably are going to exhibit a little bit of wear and tear as the campaign goes on. But ultimately, they are the most talented squad in the league. You'd expect that even if there were percentage points of 2, 3, 4, 5% drop in performance or fitness or physical condition, they've still got enough to be better than the majority of opposition that they're coming up against. So, yeah,
it's not an ability. It's not an ability thing at all. It's a mental thing. That's what you can put it down to.
Well, that's the other thing. Is it a mentality thing that Leeds have a deficit in? Do they want it as much as the opposition team? They should, because Swansea, I mean, yeah, they've still got a chance of going down, but not really, considering the number of teams beneath them. Swansea had no right to get back into that game in the manner that they did, and ultimately it was because Leeds let them.
Yeah, and when Farke's talked about, previously the team being a bit sleepy in the head and not going into the duels in the early parts of games with enough, and so letting the opposition build and fight their way into it, that's a mentality thing as well. It's an approach, it's an attitude thing. It's are you switched on enough that you're going to win all your aerial battles, that you're not going to be beaten on the ground. But there's no doubt in my mind that they've got the ability to go out and beat every single team in this division. Like, they could go out and win every single game between now and the end of the season if it was just based on talent. But talent alone doesn't get you through games like Pompey away. It doesn't get you through games like Luton away, because they will try and beat you up, and you have to withstand a barrage of physical treatment. And again, I want to stress the Pompey performance. There was nothing wrong with what Pompey did at all. I thought Pompey played really well on the day. I thought their intensity was incredible. I think it was Stuart Dallas said it. the ferocity with which Pompey were pressing Leeds in that first half made them really uncomfortable. Why not bypass the press? Why not play a bit ugly? Why not be a bit more judicious about when you go long? And maybe playing long into Peru isn't the tactic, but
hit the channels.
If Ampadu, for instance, starts at Luton, he'll need to have his radar dialed in a lot better than it was last Saturday, because going long over the top to play wingers in might be a key to relieve some pressure on Leeds if they are up against it early doors, and if they are taking a bit of a beating physically. I just think winning ugly might be the key. Just to settle everything down, calm everyone down, remind them that they are a very good team who have won an incredible number of games this season. They won an awful lot of points, and they put themselves in a position to go and get automatic promotion. Like, they're in one of the box seats. They're not in the box seat anymore, but they could have it back by the end of this weekend. That's very possible. So they just got to show that they're absolutely up for it, and that they're not a team that's fallen apart or crumbling or whatever else they're being accused of. And narratives change very quickly. The atmosphere around Leeds could be very, very different come the start of next week.
Yes. Let's move on to the other news that was released this week, and that was the 2023-24 season accounts. Leeds reported a £60.8 million loss, which, as a headline figure, is concerning. But when you contextualize it, the last season was always going to be a bit of a nightmare financially, because coming down from the Premier League, you lose out on £60 million worth of broadcast revenue just like that. You don't earn anywhere nearly enough in the Championship to sustain a squad which was a Premier League squad the previous year. The club did post revenue figures of £127.6 million, which is a Championship record. Again, that was 60 million down from the season prior, again due to no longer being a member of the Premier League. Wages were down by about 60 million, so there's some good cost control there, and the sort of the transfer payment installments deficit has been chipped away at, insofar as Leeds owed 190 million to other clubs for unpaid transfer fees, or installments, last year. This year, or rather for the accounts ending 23-24, ending June the 30th, 2024, they owed 140 million. So they paid off quite a bit there, and also are owed up to 70 million pounds, most of which is in deals which were struck over the past 12 months. It's pretty much what we anticipated. The headline loss figures over the 3 seasons, which concerns PSR, profitability and sustainability rules, which clubs need to stay within the parameters of, that exceeded the figure exceeded the maximum loss limit. But since speaking to people who are much more qualified than myself and Graham are when it comes to accounts, Kieran Maguire, for example, football finance expert, he was very forthcoming with information about how the tax deductible allowable expenses basically means that Leeds are able to sort of claim back, and that has ultimately made sure that Leeds are the right side of the PSR loss threshold, which means they won't be sanctioned for with fines or points deductions or anything like that. There's no concern of that. But there is a considerable need for promotion this season, unless, or rather, if there isn't, then it's going to be another difficult summer from a financial standpoint. What was your reading of the financial situation, Graham, based on the accounts which were released earlier this week?
Relegation is a horribly costly business. No one can really afford to get relegated, even with parachute payments. It's the price you pay, the steep price you pay for bad decisions. Bad managerial appointments, bad recruitment. You get those things wrong, and not only do you end up paying over the odds for players who were never worth it in the first place, you then continue to have to pay them gross wages, and then you pay the cost of going down. You lose out on TV money. I mean, £87 million was that was the wage bill, wasn't it, that they got it down to?
84, yeah.
84. absolutely grotesque, isn't it? To spend £84 million on wages and not go up, is horrendous.
Still not as high as Leicester's. Leicester's wage bill last season was 107 million.
Yeah. And the other two things that I guess stick in my mind are, it is utterly wild that what we reckon maybe 50 million was in a liable expense, for infrastructure, academy, women's team, community schemes, whatever else that might be. 50 million that you can actually spend 50 million on, that is absolutely remarkable. And if that's what keeps
Leeds, job though, isn't it?
Well, if that's what keeps Leeds out of PSR, then thank God for that. But it still strikes me as absolutely insane, just insane figures. And the other thing that it makes me wonder is, what is the headroom this summer? Based on where they are financially right now and what this season might have been like, what are they going to be able to spend in the summer? Because, like we've said, you're looking at 150 million if you want to stay up. That's unless you go and find 5 diamonds in the rough that you only pay pittance for, which you're looking for 5 unicorns, right? And 1 unicorn might not exist, so you're looking for 5 at least. Then you're going to have to pay a lot of money out this summer, and maybe the only way they're going to be able to do it is by selling a couple of stars. Selling players that you maybe consider luxuries. I don't know, because you can replace them with players who are just as good but for less money. I don't know, but it certainly makes me wonder about this summer and whether they'll have the capability to spend exactly what they need. I mean, what did Leicester went up and spent 75, didn't they? And I don't know if you happen to see them against Manchester City, but they did not lay a single glove on Manchester, on a Manchester City side that has lost its aura considerably this season. Leicester looked a division below, on the ball, off the ball. They looked nowhere near it, and they haven't looked anywhere near it this season. They just haven't. They haven't got the squad to really give themselves a chance of it. Southampton, even worse. They spent more than Leicester and look like they haven't spent a penny, because the quality is not there. So this season is a massive cautionary tale, I think, that when you go up, I mean, dare we say it, is it even worth risking PSR, being right on the deadline, or maybe just dipping a toe on the illegal side just to stay up?
I think you have to. Not do the illegal stuff, or not illegal, but sort of be on the wrong side of PSR just to stay up. I think you absolutely have to go right. You have to go balls to the wall with it, which is what the club have done. Well, what they did last season, they'll have to do exactly the same this season.
Yeah.
And just providing a bit of context for, a lot of people are going, okay, why didn't the club sign anyone in January? Why didn't they buy a number 10? Like, even if it's 10 million, you know what? At the time, we were probably on that train as well, saying, surely they can find the room. If you think about the 3-year accounting loss limit that teams in the Premier League are allowed is 105 million over 3 seasons. If you drop down into the Championship, that loss limit reduces to 83 million if you spend one of those seasons in the Championship. Next year, we'll see the accounts released, and Leeds' loss limit will be 62 million, I believe, or 63, because over the 3-year period, 2 of those seasons will have taken place in the Championship. Consider that Leeds have made a loss of 60.8 million this season, or rather last season in the 23-24 accounts. Doesn't leave you with a great deal of room, does it? So you're going to have to find a lot of, those tax deductibles again. You're going to have to sell players. You're not going to be able to spend freely when you still have so many, transfer installment outgoings, to the tune of 140 million pounds. I mean, again, in the last 12 months or last 10 months, more of those will have been paid. But again, not all of them. And yes, there is the context that Jorginho Ruter's fee, Crescencio Somerville's fee, Charlie Cresswell, Glenn Kamara, those transfer fees are not yet reflected in the accounts which have been released. Archie Gray's is, as we understand it. But those other 4 are yet to be to be reflected. So that does help you out in terms of getting you the right side of PSR, maybe not making too much of a loss, but it still doesn't give you, broadly speaking, it doesn't give you 150 million worth of spending money as room to go out this summer and just splurge on the best talent there is. And so it makes it really, really difficult.
That's us talking in the almost assumption that Leeds go up as well, which is currently not a done thing. If they do not go up, it's difficult. I mean, difficult is an understatement of the century, isn't it? The other thing I would say is, doesn't it make it look a little bit like that Archie Gray sale really was needed before the accounts deadline? I mean, imagine what they'd look like without that money in there.
You're not going to find another £40 million worth of tax deductibles
down the back of the sofa.
No. So yeah, you can. I mean, I think it was it at the time that the 49ers, or shortly afterwards, the 49ers said, that Archie's sale wasn't a necessity.
I mean, well, maybe they were being clever with semantics. I don't know, and saying that it didn't need to be Archie. But I think somebody needed to be sold, and I think they probably thought that Somerville would go quicker than he did.
But I mean, it's difficult for all teams. It's difficult for all purchasing clubs, because the accounts deadline is June the 30th. So teams aren't really going to spend massive amounts up front before that deadline, because that kind of bleeds into your current season spending. You'd much rather have it in the, I don't want to compare it to like, ClearPay or Klarna payments, paying for things on credit, but ultimately all clubs will do that for massive transfers. That's why the installments figures are so high, because very rarely, Calvin Phillips to Man City and Rafinha to Barcelona aside, very rarely do clubs pay money up front for transfers.
And even in that case, Barcelona didn't, did they? They a loan company paid it for Leeds, and Barca then owed someone else the money. It's all very sobering. It's all very grim, really. The financial reality of relegation, the financial reality of trying to be in the Premier League in the first place and trying to get there is just, it's insane, really. And this is why Tony Mowbray said, "Are you going to spend 200 million to give yourself half a chance, or are you going to go with this team and get relegated by February?" And it's the reality. Like, if West Brom went up, for example, via the playoffs, like, will they get 10 points? Will they need a miracle to get 15, 20, 25 points? Because so many clubs are just not equipped to spend what's needed to be spent. If Sheffield United go up, you'd fancy Chris Wilder to give them a good go at getting a decent points tally with a few additions, but will they be able to spend anywhere near enough to properly compete? Is it now almost impossible for 9 out of 10 clubs going up to establish themselves in the Premier League? It's starting to feel more and more like a closed shop, that you get to look, but you can't buy, and so then you have to leave very quickly.
Yeah, West Brom is actually a pretty good example, because their accounts were obviously released very recently, given that it was the start of a new financial year. And I mean, we bought that Leeds' wage bill being 84 million for last season. West Brom's was 43. So I mean, that's roughly half. Still an enormous amount of money for a club like West Brom. But the biggest concern from West Brom's profit and loss account is that from 2023 to 24, their turnover halved. And the majority of that was due, in fact, pretty much all of it was due to the fact that West Brom's broadcasting revenue, i.e. the parachute payments that they received in the final year of the 3-year parachute payment scheme, their broadcasting revenue was 43 million. Last season, their broadcasting income was 11 million. So that's down 31.7 million pounds. If as soon as you lose parachute payments, you are screwed, basically. So you need to go up within those first 3 years.
Which makes it all the more impressive what Bielsa did,
Well, exactly. Yeah.
It's incredible to do what he did to finish top of the championship by 10 points without parachute payments is an outlier. And I think will come to be seen as an even more impressive feat as the years go on, if this situation doesn't be corrected somehow, if they don't make more of a level playing field financially for teams going up. And look at Leeds, right? They have the ability to generate revenue far beyond most other Championship clubs, and which gives them a much better chance of competing financially if they do go up. But it's still incredibly difficult, and that says it all, I think.
Yeah. Before we end the first part of this week's episode, there was a statement put out by Luton Town's Supporters Trust relating to the anniversary of Chris and Kev's passing. Graham, you ran a story on that. What was the gist of it?
They're basically encouraging Luton fans to join in with a minute of applause in the 25th minute. Leeds fans, I would expect, will probably turn their backs to the play, as they do traditionally, as they did last weekend against Swansea. I think there'll probably be some effort to mark the anniversary before the game by both clubs. We know that the clubs were in discussions about that. The players and Daniel Farke and the club's hierarchy, Angus Kinnear, I think Pete Lowy was there, have laid flowers and listened to a tribute from Gareth Senior, who's of course friends and close to the families, and has personally experienced this kind of harrowing loss, and had to be like a spokesperson over the years, and they were all there to hear what he had to say this year, which is largely the same as what he says every year, is that the injustice still burns, and that what Leeds fans were accused of was not the truth, and this was murder, and nothing short of that. So yeah, Leeds have I think Leeds have made really good strides towards paying their respects this year and appropriately marking the 25th anniversary. And our thoughts are obviously with the family and friends of Chris and Kev.
Absolutely. Echo what Graham is saying there. We'll touch base again after the press conference, so bear with us. Okay, welcome back to the second part of this week's Inside Elland Road podcast. Graham, you've just been up at Thorpe Arch speaking to Daniel Farke. He had plenty to say, but of course the headline news was that Carl Darlow will be playing in goal this weekend, and we suspect for the remainder of the season, provided he doesn't pick up an injury, an illness, or a suspension. Immediate thoughts on the way that Farke delivered that news today, Graham?
Yet again, the man shows that he is keenly aware of the narrative around his team and what's being said and what fans are saying. Got out ahead of it straight away. First thing he wanted to say was that it was important to have clarity, and so he basically named his starting goalkeeper for Saturday's game at Luton, which I think shows the severity of the situation, doesn't it? That he wasn't leaving it open for interpretation. He wanted to clear it up right now. And I think, like we said before, it removes this narrative around the team. This debate and the unhappiness at least one of these situations that has cropped up this season. It just removes all that from the team as they go to Luton at a really important time. And his reasoning is fair enough. I mean, I think for me, it's probably a bit late in the day. I mean, I certainly don't disagree with the decision. Like we said earlier in the podcast, it had to happen. I just think it should have happened before now, but it has at least now happened.
Yeah. Farke was saying that Meslier took the news well, that he understood the decision, and he felt as though that it was a weight off his shoulders, or Farke believes that it's a weight off his shoulders. He said that he was laughing and joking with his teammates in training. He's very aware of his responsibility between now and the end of the season as sort of the backup goalkeeper, and I think that's exactly what you want to hear. How true it is, only Ilham Meslier will know of how he's feeling towards the situation. But I think you do have to approach the situation of being dropped or benched with good faith, don't you? Because ultimately, the man who replaces you is going to be crucial in making sure that the team achieves something which they set out to do at the beginning of the season, which is promotion.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it doesn't matter how Meslier feels. The decision's been made, but it does matter how he acts. And Sam Allardyce says he sulked a bit when he dropped him. Maybe that, I don't know. Brand new manager walks in, you've got no kind of nothing in the bank, in terms of relationship and trust, and then the first thing he says to you is you're dropped. Maybe it's a different situation with Farke, who of course has managed him and backed him probably beyond reason for the last two seasons. And now, he's got to basically suck it up and be the number 2 and play his role in the warm-ups and training, do his bit and prioritize Darlow. And ultimately, he wants the Leeds to be in the Premier League because whilst I don't think his future is at Leeds beyond this season, at least I don't think it should be, that he'll want to leave with a promotion. Everyone will want to leave on a promotion. Everyone will want the wage bump that comes with being a Premier League player at Leeds. And yeah, there's no footballer on earth, I think, that would. Oh, well, there's very few footballers on earth that would put their team's season in jeopardy based on their own feelings at being dropped at this stage. And it's important for the team as well, because they could quite rightly say to Melier, well, we've almost all been dropped at some stage. And we didn't have a hissy fit and we played our part. So, yeah, it just has to be a professional, I think, about it. And you feel for him in a way because it's not a nice thing. But at the end of the day, this is his job, and his job now is to be a number 2.
Yeah, and you can feel for him in the sense that his teammates will or have been dropped in previous weeks, but infrequently has it been the case that Farke has sort of got out ahead of the question or got out ahead of the news to be like, look, this is the decision that I'm going to make regarding this specific player. So, yeah, things are a little bit different with regards to that. What else did you make of the rest of Farke's press conference? Speaking about, you asked him about the physicality that Luton are going to bring. Can't think for the life of me if you might have been inspired or motivated to ask that after our earlier discussion during part 1 of the podcast. But yeah, what did you make of the tone and the feeling that Farke gave off today? Because he did reiterate his point, his red top headline that he's 100% convinced that Leeds will be in the Premier League next season.
You inspire me every day, Joseph. Every day, not just
Stop
today
it.
with a question.
Stop it. Honestly, my head's so big, I'm not going to be able to get out of the room.
And then your mustache would look even smaller, wouldn't it, if your head got bigger? Yeah, he's pretty bullish about the fact that, I mean, he's accepting of the fact, isn't he, that they might be in for a bit of a kick in, a bit of a buffeting. But they've got to stand up to it, and they've got to dominate. They've got to spend more time on the ball. Got to spend more time in Luton's half. Got to make life difficult for Luton in the way they can, and not get sucked into a battle that just becomes, up and under after up and under. And I can see that. And yeah, I have to admit, I don't really like him talking about the playoffs. I don't like it. I don't like him saying anything other than we're going for top 2. I don't think it's good for the emotional health of this club or the squad to start accepting the playoffs as a possible outcome, even if everyone knows that, you might finish 3rd. I don't think you give a voice to it. I don't know what you think, but I don't really like that creeping into the talk. I'd rather you just focus on finishing top 2. You're in the top 2 right now. Why would you even countenance the idea of slipping further down the table?
Yeah, I agree with it. I think it makes sense to have it in the back of your mind, but don't discuss it. Certainly not publicly. Keep that within your close circle. And it's a difficult position that Farke's in because he was asked specifically a question about the playoffs, and he can't just go, I'm not talking. Well, he can simply go, I'm not talking about the playoffs. And maybe he should have done and said, look, we're in the top 2, we'll stay in the top 2, and kept it at that. But that's not his style. He does prefer to be very full with his answers. So there was that. There's 7 games still to play. There's 21 games to play, points to play for. I think we're still a little bit premature when it comes to playoffs, because he is right. Last season was a chasing game, trying to keep pace with Leicester and Ipswich, who obviously had the head start. This year has been sort of just keeping your head above water in those 2 automatic promotion places. And currently they're still doing it. Let's not forget, Burnley are on a 26-game unbeaten run. That's ridiculous. It's remarkable, and full credit to them. I mean, only conceding 11 goals in 39 games. Again, ridiculous statistic. Sheffield United just seem very workmanlike. They get the job done. So you can't really see either of those teams slipping up on paper. just as Leeds have slipped up, the chance of one of them slipping up is doubled, because there's two teams that are in this mix as well who are not Leeds. So I think, again, the message is just keep going, try and rediscover some of that early 2025 form that had you pumping teams left, right, and centre, and see if you can just finish the season strongly. It really is as simple as that. The only issues that I think Farke has or had was this building narrative around the goalkeeper, which he's now resolved, and potentially the situation with Brandon Aronson or Willie Gnonto. There aren't really many other issues with that squad. He doesn't have injuries. The only two players who are unavailable are Max Wöber and Patrick Bamford, but really it sounds as though they're making steps in the right direction.
I think they are available. I certainly think Bamford's available. From what I hear, he's been training, has looked decent in training for the last couple of weeks. So I certainly think he's available. Max Wöber maybe is a slightly different case, but I almost think I've ruled him out of my thinking anyway.
Yeah. I feel like it's just easy to lump them in together, considering that they haven't made a matchday squad for some time. Those of you watching on the YouTube stream, you'll quite enjoy the fact that Graham has mastered the art of a silent sneeze there. He's managed to sneeze twice without making any noise, which, as host of this podcast, and we'll call myself the sound engineer, even though I don't know what peak amplitude is. I'm really impressed by that, and I'm grateful to Graham for making that effort. No one can hear him laughing uproariously because he's still got his mic muted, which is a little bit disappointing.
Well, I thought there was a third sneeze. On its way, so I was just protecting myself and you by keeping mute on until you finished your little diatribe. Right.
Let's go on to predictions then for this weekend. We said in the Inside Ellen Road newsletter which starting 11 we'd like to go for. Would you like to reveal what we both agreed on independently?
I would. Number 1, Harry Christie, come on down. Number 1, Carl Darlow. Bogle at right back, Firpo at left back, Rodon right centre half, Struijk left centre half, Ampadu, because I think a week further on, I certainly think with a little bit of criticism as well from his manager and a bit of public acceptance of that he wasn't at his best, I think he'll be spurred on to be even better. I think he'll relish a bit of a physical battle as well. He'll be next to Tanaka in our lineup. Right-sided winger would be James. Left-sided winger would be Manor Solomon. Just clinging on to that starting place with your fingertips, Solomon's son. And then at number 10, Willie Gnonto. And at number 9, Joel Peru. That was the team that we went with. That was our more of a recommendation or an opinion than it was a prediction. Honestly, if I'm making a prediction, I could still see Aronson starting and Gnonto coming off the bench.
Yeah, I can see that as well. In terms of a scoreline prediction, then what do we think?
I'm going to say Luton Town 1, Leeds United 2, and I think Gnonto with a late winner.
You're all about the narrative, aren't you? You're all about the headlines and the storylines. Yeah, I'm going to go with 1-0 Leeds, not least because they have to win this game, I think, to regain a bit of momentum and go into Middlesbrough on, is it Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday night. Yeah. You really want to have some, I don't know, just a bit of swagger about you, because Middlesbrough, while they do have injuries in defence, they're still a decent side with some real top attacking prospects. Before we finish then this week, we had in the last hour or so news that Leeds' final home game of the season at Elland Road will be played at 8 p.m. on Monday, the 28th of April against Bristol City. That's been moved from the Saturday 26th. Again, for Sky, it's a TV deal which Leeds agreed and benefit from. But, you do have to think, again, it rears the argument of football's for the fans or just those with the fattest wallets, basically. It's frustrating, and I understand the disappointment for a lot of fans. I also understand the frustration at the fact that Sheffield United will play on the Friday evening on the 25th of April. Burnley will play on Saturday lunchtime on the 26th of April, leaving over 48 hours before Leeds play their penultimate game of the season against Bristol City. So, yeah, it's a difficult one. What do you make of it?
Well, the Blades play Monday, Friday, don't they, of that week before Leeds play. They'll play on Easter Monday, won't they? And then they'll play on the Friday night. So they've got less recovery time for the penultimate game and more recovery time for the final game. Leeds still have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday in their own beds. Maybe not Friday night in their own beds, but they still have a decent amount of time between the penultimate game and the final game at Plymouth to recover, I would suggest. I don't think it puts them at any real disadvantage. I mean, at least they'll know by the time Monday comes around what the task will be.
Yeah, that's one positive. That's one way of
If
looking
we're
at it.
still at the point where it's a going concern, I suspect it might well be.
Yeah, I think it will be as well. It's going to be, I think it does go to the final day. I think it goes right to the wire. I think that third last game week of the season in which Burnley and Sheffield United play each other, I think you're going to have eyes glued to screens from a Leeds persuasion. That is going to be one hell of a game to take in. Probably not from a neutral's perspective, because with what's at stake and how we know Burnley can play and frustrate and bore. Yeah, but from a results perspective, that is going to be that could be huge for the following game week. Graham, do you have anything more that you'd like to add, or anything that I'm missing from this week in Leeds United?
No, just that Farke said Willie Gnonto was ready to go, which suggests he might be available for a start, which does give him a decision to make. But no, I think we've pretty much covered all bases.
I think we have indeed. Right, that's everything on the Inside Elland Road podcast this week. I've been Joe Donoghue, joined by Graham Smith. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.